Today, we're diving into a really powerful teaching from Cedar Lampe. It takes a story that's thousands of years old and uses it to ask a question that's, well, incredibly relevant to how we all live our lives today. You'll soon find out if you're a Martha or a Mary, and it all kicks off with this one simple question.
Just let that one sit with you for a second. Think about all the things you do, all the running around, all the good deeds. Are you absolutely sure they're what you're supposed to be doing in this exact moment? That's the real tension we're going to unpack right now.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the story that this whole idea comes from. Then we'll get to know the two mindsets, the Martha and Mary archetypes that Cedar Lampe talks about. We'll see what happens when those two worlds collide, and then we'll wrap up with a really tough question about change.
Okay, so first things first, let's set the stage with the story that this entire principle is really built on.
So, picture this. The scene is super simple. Jesus shows up at a house. One sister, Martha, immediately jumps into action. She's doing what any good host would do, prepping food, making sure everything's perfect. But her sister, Mary, does something different. Something kind of radical, actually. She just sits down and listens.
So let's really break down that first mindset, the one Cedar Lampe calls the Martha archetype.
You see, according to Cedar Lampe, this isn't just about being a busy person. It's about being so locked into a pre-programmed script of what you think you should be doing that you completely miss what's actually needed. It's all about tradition and duty without ever pausing to ask why.
And this is probably starting to sound familiar, right? This is that mindset of pure action, with zero observation. It just rushes forward, so convinced its plan is the right plan, and it gets really annoyed with anyone who isn't keeping up. It looks at someone being still and sees laziness, not realizing that person might be the only one who gets what's actually going on.
And this quote from Cedar Lampe just hits the nail on the head. Martha made the how of her service, the cooking, more important than the why of the visit. She was so focused on her own agenda, she totally missed the actual purpose of this incredible moment.
Okay, so now let's flip the coin and look at the second archetype, because this is where the contrast gets really interesting.
The Mary archetype, in Cedar Lampe's teaching, is the total opposite. This mindset has what you might call the superpower of pausing. It's about being patient and observant enough to tap into the real reason something is happening, way beyond just the surface-level stuff.
Yeah, this approach values receiving way more than just doing. Mary got it. She understood that Jesus didn't just stop by for a free meal. He was there to offer something much more important. She realized that in that moment, her job wasn't to serve, but to actually be served spiritually.
Cedar Lampe uses this absolutely brilliant analogy. Think about it like you're at a restaurant. Mary is the kind of waiter who comes to your table, listens carefully to your order, and writes it down. Martha? She's the waiter who just assumes she knows what you want and rushes into the kitchen to make a meal you never even asked for.
So, you can see where this is going, right? What happens when you put these two totally different mindsets in the same room working toward what's supposed to be the same goal? Well, conflict is pretty much inevitable.
I mean, just look at this side by side. On one hand, you've got rushing ahead, focused on doing, convinced it's right. On the other hand, you have waiting patiently, focused on receiving, just trying to understand. It's not just a small disagreement, it's a fundamental clash. One person is operating from duty, the other is listening with intent. They're on completely different planets.
And here it is, the explosion. Martha is so frustrated. She doesn't just see Mary as being unhelpful, she sees it as a personal injustice. She's so certain she's in the right that she actually goes to Jesus to complain about her sister, totally missing the irony that she's interrupting the very teaching she desperately needs to hear.
And this, right here, is the crucial warning from Cedar Lampe's teaching. The real danger of the Martha mindset isn't just that you'll get tired. No, it's that you risk public failure. You risk working so hard on the wrong thing that you actually end up sabotaging the very plan you think you're helping. So all of this leads us to the biggest and maybe the most difficult part of this whole teaching. Is it even possible for a Martha to become a Mary?
And here's the real challenge that the teaching lays out. The Martha mindset is often so convinced of its own righteousness that when it gets corrected, it doesn't learn. It just doubles down. It sees quiet listening as laziness and any kind of spiritual guidance as a personal attack.
And this is the really provocative note Cedar Lampe leaves us with. He points out that even a direct in-person correction from Jesus himself doesn't seem to change Martha's core programming. And that leaves us with a truly challenging question.
If she couldn't change right then and there, how can any of us? How do we learn to be still and just listen when every bone in our body and, frankly, the entire world is screaming at us to just get up and do something?